35, before we go on today to the other form of the equation that we are looking at. In question number 35, it says that he is working for a company, $65 he has to pay for his uniform. His earnings are $13 an hour. The cost of his uniform is withheld from his earnings. Write an equation that models the total money he has, M, after 8 hours of work. And we are asked to graph it. So, M is how much money he has. We know he's making how much an hour? 13, so that'd be our 13 in this case, H. And he had to pay for his uniform. He doesn't get paid. He has to subtract that, so he's actually not making money, right, for a few hours of work since he's had to pay for his uniform. So it should have been a minus 65. And so then when you are asked to graph that equation, if you were making a graph of that, that definitely has, if you are looking at it, these are your hours of work, right? This is your first hour, so this is your hours. This is your money. You are definitely starting way down here at negative 65. Okay? And then you should steadily be increasing. When do we finally make money? After which hour? 15. After how many hours of work? After 5 hours, so 5 times 13, right? So 5 times 13 gives us 65, so that's when we finally start, right? So something along this line. And you might have had going up by, like if you had your $13 each time, so going up by 13. So if you had 13 here and 26 and so forth, and set your scale as you were going down. All right. Any other questions? So when I look at your graphs on your graph paper, I need to see somewhere this equation. You did not have to tell me the slope and the y-intercept, but you need to have that equation by your graph. Yeah.
Are we allowed to go and check the answers to find out what interval would be the best of the graphs?
Sure, but you should be kind of thinking about it as you look at the problem, and so that, like, to think if it makes sense. Like yesterday I had someone on the graphing one go up by, like, they started at 65 and then they went up, the next one was like, or it was like 50 and then they went up to 100. And so it was going up by 5. So, like, to me it didn't make sense because this looked like pretty much a horizontal line, right? So, I mean, going up by 5, if you can see what your slope is, that might be a determinant to help you get your interval, right, that you should go up by. So thinking about that. But yes, by all means, check in the back and take a look at it, okay? So next week on Tuesday, we are going to have a quiz on the 3 forms of our equations. So this is the next form. So we've had point slope, or that modified point slope. We've had slope intercept. And the last form that we're going to look at is standard form. So we're going to be working on standard form. Today you have an assignment from the book. We'll be doing more on Wednesday. Next week, Monday, which I heard some of you are gone for band from this period. If you're in band and you're gone, there's going to be a new lesson, and I already put like the video up with that, so you can do that at any time. If you want to have it done before Monday, you could. The quiz is Tuesday, and the quiz is going to be more from the review that we do this Wednesday. So, looking at our I can statements, I can write linear equations in standard form and rewrite it to the other forms. The other forms are point slope and slope intercept that we've been doing. I can identify the forms of the equation, the standard form, which is the ax plus by. I can relate the constants a, b, and c to values of our x-intercept and y-intercept and to the slope. So today we're going to talk about that quite a bit. And then the definition of what is an x and y-intercept when we graph it. So standard form of an equation is always going to be in this form. ax plus by equals c. A, b, and c are real numbers, and a and b are both non-zero, or not zero. That is going to be key to this definition. Okay? So this is back on page 12 that you are looking at. If you were going to continue reading, Mallory, would you read, since there are many equivalent?
Are many equivalent or standard form of one equations or any one line or color could be a different point slope. Because of this, there are some zero guidelines for standard form. Typically, the a term is not a negative number. It frequently avoid these interactions because both in standard form unless students dealing with money or a situation that makes more sense to use them. Typically, A, B, and C should not have any common factors.
So, key things, A, not negative. So when we look at A, we always want our A to be positive. That's going to be a first key thing that we are going to be talking about. A is going to be not a negative number. Typically, we're not going to have fractions or decimals, okay? Now, the only time is if they're telling us, like in some of our story situations, and it makes sense that we're charging maybe $1.54 per pound of nuts or for peanuts or something like that, or and they give us a story situation, then you might have them. And usually they cannot have common factors, which means you want it in simplest form. Our book follows these same guidelines. You'll find it in the back of the book as you are looking at this. So we start off and it says, what are the x and y intercept of an equation? Now, the x-intercept, if we are looking at it, is when y is 0. So keeping in mind, when we are looking at this, that whenever we're talking about the x-intercept is when y is 0, and we're trying to find what is this value of x. The easiest way to do it, replace in that same equation right up here, replace the y with 0. 4 times 0 is 0, 3x equals 24, x is 8. So our x-intercept is 8, and we could write it as an ordered pair, 8, 0. It says, what do you notice about the x-intercept comparing the values for A, B, and C? So we want to identify our A is what in this problem? A is always what's times x, so A is 3, B is 4, and C is 24. So is there a relationship, I want you to talk to your shoulder partner for just a minute, between the A, B, and C and how we got this number 8? So just take a minute. Exactly the same. If I'm looking at the x-intercept, it's exactly the same as taking C and dividing it by A, which in our case would have been 24 divided by 3. That gave us our 8. That's always going to be our x-intercept. Okay? But you might get to a quiz and not quite remember all of that. So then the key thing is just plug in y is 0 and solve for x. So on this one, we have a y-intercept of 0. Again, they replace the y with the x with 0. Remember, anytime you're finding y-intercept, that means that x is 0 and you're trying to find the y value. 4y equals 24, y is 6. So again, looking at our value of a, which a was 3, right? B was 4 and C was 24. What could we say if we are looking now for our x-intercept?
24 divided by 4.
So C divided by, in this case, B, right? So we're going to look at that pattern, and that will always be the case. C divided by B, which in our case would have been 24 over 4, does give us the y-intercept. And again, if you're writing that y-intercept and you like writing it as an ordered pair because it helps you to figure out where it is on the graph, put it as an ordered pair as you are looking at that, right? So as we continue that next part then, so that's one way. My hint is sometimes we go through these notes and we go through them pretty fast, and the vocabulary that's in here, there's a lot of vocabulary. And my hint would be you need to go back and go over these notes. I put some Quizlets up. You need to have this vocab down. So when I say x-intercept, y-intercept, standard form, point slope, slope-intercept, you need to know right away what we're talking about. So in this one, right away, it says we're going to find our x and y-intercept. So could you use for x-intercept from that last page, we said it's always going to be what? C divided by, look back on your notes, C divided by what for the x-intercept? C divided by A. Right? So C divided by A, if we are looking at our y-intercept is going to be C divided by B. So in our equation, first thing we want to identify, what is our A? Our A is 1. Our B is -2. And our C is -2. So if I'm using that y-intercept, that rule, I might replace -2 divided by A, which is 1. So my x-intercept is at -2. That means it's at -2 what? 0 or 0, -2? -2, 0. X-intercept has to be on, remember, x-intercept must be on this x-axis, okay? So if you would have put 0, -2, it's not on the x, so that wouldn't make sense for the x-intercept, okay? X-intercept must be on this x-axis, okay? When we look at our y-intercept, again, we're going to put in c, which is -2 divided by -2, which gives us 1. Means my y-intercept is at 0, 1. Again, it has to be on the y-axis. So we plot both points, and now we're going to take our straight edge and we're going to draw a line through those 2 points. Can you tell, if we look at this line, if I asked you to rewrite this equation, can we tell the slope of the line? So what is the slope of this line? We count up 1 and over 2, right? So what is the slope of our line? Our slope has a line of m equaling 1/2, right? How is that related? It says to the a, b, and c. So again, our a in this case was 1, b is -2, and c is -2. So in this case, when we are thinking about how this slope is related, before we do that, how can I write this equation in slope-intercept form? What would my equation be in slope-intercept? Y equals 1/2 x plus 1, right? Because here's the y-intercept, right? So that's my equation in slope-intercept, okay? And it says, well, how is the slope related to the a, b, and c? We had a slope of 1/2. It's always going to be -a divided by b. So if we think of ours, our a, we're going to always do the opposite of a, so -1, divided by whatever value b is, -2. Negative divided by negative. Someone asked me yesterday, we have negative divided by negative, should we keep it positive? Always. Negative divided by negative is always going to be a positive. So in this case, we get that positive 1. Okay. Alright. So, first thing you're asked to do, look at each equation, we're asked to rewrite them in standard form. Standard form typically means the a term is non-negative and we can only have integers. So if we are starting this one out, what's my first step? I need to get 5 by itself. Gavin, what would you do first?
-5.
No. First off, I want 5 by itself.
Times everything by 7.
I could do that too.
Why
But
don't you just choose the
first, let's just get the 5 by itself. Soren, do what?
add?
At 3/7 x. So I want the x to be positive, so I am definitely going to add 3/7 x, possibly first, and I want it to almost look like standard form, which in this case, the 5. I'm going to always put the x first, so I'm going to put 3/7 x plus 1y, if that helps me, equals 5. And I do agree, Gavin, we do want to multiply everything by 7. And you could have done it right away. At this point, we are going to take each of these times 7. If you want to do it with one distributive property, if you want to show 7 times each one, my hint would be kind of if you write it by it, some of you make less mistakes. So if I take every single thing times 7, this first one is going to be left with 3x, right? The 7 over 7 cancels to be 1, plus 7y equals 35. Standard form of our equation. This next one is written kind of in our point slope form. So we're going to distribute first. So as we start distributing, Brecken, what are we going to have? Y minus 2 is equal to?
-2.
Minus 2. So I need to get the x positive, so I'm going to think of adding the 1/3 x to both sides. And at the same time, I don't want this minus 2 here, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So I keep my equal sign. I'm going to have 1/3 x. The 2's cancel. plus my y, I cannot add those together, equals 0. I cannot have a fraction in the answer, so Sanjay, I'm going to multiply everything now by 3 over 1. So again, I don't care if you decide to do distributive property and put the 3, or if you show the 3 next to each one like we did the 7. 1/3 x times 3 is going to leave us with 1x plus 3y, still equaling 0. So now the question is, as we look at each of these, here's the question that they are looking at. Is 3x plus 9y equals 0 also the correct answer for number 2?
Yeah.
So, if we are looking at that, it is correct, but as you read this, Jacob, want to read what it says? Yep, see up there.
Yes. However, there is a common factor that you can divide A, B, and C by. The common factor is 3. If you divide all 3 terms by 3, you get the answer above. This is why we typically write our standard form answers such that there is no common factor.
So we're going to always try and get the common factor and divide it out. So instead of keeping it as 3x plus 9y, I probably would not mark that wrong. But if you are looking at that, the better answer is the 1x plus 3y equals 0. Okay? And again, I don't need you to have all of this written down. Is this also correct? Yes. But usually we want it simplified. So if you see a common factor to all 3 coefficients of your variables, the 2 coefficients and then the constant, you want to divide those up. Okay? So,
Almost there.
So, we're going to look at equations. Rewrite it in standard form. So when we are looking at these, x equals 3, if we're going to write it in standard form, what is it going to look like? X equals 3. That would mean, what's in front of x? 1x plus how many y's? 0y equals 3. We said earlier that the x-intercept is always what letter divided by? C divided by A. Y-intercept is going to be C divided by B. Okay. If we are looking at this second equation, the second equation, y equals -2. In standard form, it would be 0x. Do you agree? Plus 1y. So if we are looking at that one, so now, first one if we are looking at our x-intercept, we're going to take c and divide it by a. C divided by a should be 3 over 1, which gives us 3. What's our y-intercept going to be at that problem? C divided by 3 divided by 0 is undefined, not 0, undefined. When I'm looking at my x-intercept over here, we said c divided by a. So if we are looking at c divided by a, what happens to our x-intercept? Undefined. If I'm looking at my y-intercept, we are going to get that answer. -2 over 1 or -2. If you go to graph x-intercept of 3, so if we're plotting that point, x-intercept of 3. Everywhere on this equation, x is always what?
3.
Does it matter what y is? So here is 3, 0, right? This is 3, 1, and this would be 3, 3. If I'm going to graph that line, this is 3, -4. Everywhere on that line, it is going to be a vertical line. And if you think about the slope of a vertical line, same as our y-intercept, it is undefined. Okay? When we are looking here at this problem, y equals -2, my y-intercept down here was at -2. All of these points over here at 3, -2. Everything has to be, for my y-coordinate, has to be -2. Is this a function, the second line? Yes, it passes the vertical line test. Each input gives me a different output, right? It's just that output is always -2 as we are looking at that, okay? So as we are looking at this last part, they kind of give you this, let's generalize what we know. Anytime you have an equation where x equals any number, it is always going to be a vertical line. Anytime you have, so x is going to give us vertical. Anytime we have y equaling any number, it's always going to be horizontal. So we have our horizontal line. In the first one, we are always going to have our vertical line when we look at that. And it says a way to memorize this is using this mnemonic device. So HOY-VUX, sometimes they say it that way, HOY-VUX. H standing for it is a horizontal line. Slope is 0, and V and our Y equals. So horizontal, slope 0, equation is Y equals. When we look at the vertical one, V is for vertical, U, the slope is always undefined, and it is always X equals for our equation. So in your quiz next week, and in homework, it might say, write an equation for a horizontal line. Write an equation that's going to be neither horizontal or vertical. So right now I want you to do this one, horizontal line. Do that one right now in your paper. You could have had any number, right? Y equals, I could have had Y equals 5 and 1/5, right? I could have Y equals -7.324. Y equals any number is going to be a horizontal line, okay? So that second one says it's neither vertical nor horizontal. So, what are you thinking, Kylie, Elena? What did you guys have back there?
Y equals 3x plus 2.
What's that?
Y equals 3x plus 2.
Y equals 3x plus 2. Gotta have a y and an x. Could we use an equation from our first day? Think about our equations that first day when we were doing those, right? Y equals, I have a slope, 2x minus 3 plus 1. That would work, right? So I want to give me another equation. We're looking at another equation. Yeah. Y equals 2/3 x. Don't have to have a plus a number, right? Just has to have a slant or a slope. So I need to have both a y and an x if it's going to be not vertical or not horizontal when we are looking at that, okay? So there's many options for that. We're on that last part of your notes that we need to fill in. So as we are looking at this last part, it says, as you are looking at the story situation. Abby, you want to read for us, please?
In online media download for cell phones for $1 each and you're just going to $60 that you're going to spend. Writing back the equation that describes the number of songs and movies you can purchase for $60.
So we have songs and movies, right? So variables sometimes to use, since they have songs over here on our X, you can either use S or X for your songs, right? Because as we look at our graph, that's what they have over here. And over here, if you're in your equation, you use M, or if you use Y, that stands for our movies, right? We're paying $1 for each song, $15 for each movie. We have a total of $60 that we can spend. This is an equation set up perfectly for standard form, all these type of story problems, because we are looking at 1x, $1 per song, plus 15y equals 60. If I'm looking for my y-intercept we said is when we take c and divide it by b. So in this case, my a was 1, my b was 15, and my c was 60. That's me. That's me, so you're good. I had it on from last night when my daughter was trying to get a hold of me, so I'd make sure I could hear what she. So if we're looking at this one, what's our y-intercept? 60 divided by 15. We can only buy 4 movies, right? If I'm looking for my x-intercept is going to be way over at 60 because I'm taking C and dividing it by A, which is 1. So way over here. Now, when we look at this, the easiest way when we're looking at a graph is then connecting that y-intercept and x-intercept as we look at that. But can we really have phi half a movie? No. So what are we really looking at? We are really looking at just these points going here, right? And right. This is a definite discrete graph, okay? But if you notice in the situation what it says down here, it says this is a discrete situation, so technically we should be putting dots for our whole number answers. Sometimes it's difficult to draw a line as long as we note that the whole number answers. So you could have a line here, and you could simply tell me your answer is discrete, and your domain and range are only whole numbers, right? So you can't have fractions or decimals for an answer. Okay. This last part is kind of the summary. This is like when I'm putting together, like, what do I need to study to make sure I understand standard form? So, if we're describing a line using more than one linear equation, any two equations are going to always be equivalent. So, a line that has several equations represented in it, all of them are the correct answer. So, if on the quiz, I ask you to simply write an equation, this equation or this one would do. Both would work, right? You're using your point, these 2 points that we were looking at, okay? If I say slope-intercept, you need to make sure you rewrite it with your y equals the mx plus b. And then standard form has to be in, so here's when we're looking for y equals mx plus b, and standard form has to be in the form ax plus by equals c. And our a is usually a number greater or equal to 0, and it's not a fraction. So we can have no fractions and no decimals when we think of standard form. And the exception, I would say, is sometimes you might have a decimal, like when you're talking about standard form when you're dealing with story problems with money or something along that. Then I probably would take that with a fraction. So your homework tonight. So